The book we are reading today is Pearl Harbor by Tamara L. Britton. On December 7, 1941, Japanese troops attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and its naval station. Many people died and many Navy ships were lost. The attack brought the United States into World War II. Pearl Harbor was not always a naval station, however. For hundreds of years, native Hawaiians fished and caught oysters in this harbor. Later, European explorers discovered the harbor. Soon, Pearl Harbor was a center of business for the trade routes in the Pacific Ocean. In the late 19th century, the United States built military bases at Pearl Harbor. U.S. leaders recognized the harbor's location as a good place for a naval station. They made Pearl Harbor home of the U.S. Navy's Pacific Fleet. After the Allies' victory in World War II, Pearl Harbor's naval station was repaired, but many people believe there should be a memorial to all who died in the Japanese attack and the war. So Hawaii started a program to create memorials. Many people wanted to build a memorial at the USS Arizona. More than 1,700 sailors died when this ship sunk. In 1962, the USS Arizona Memorial was dedicated. The memorials in Pearl Harbor honor those who lost their lives in the Japanese attack and in World War II. Through these sites, people from all over the world remember the sacrifices made by those who died in selfless service to their countries. Because of this, Pearl Harbor and its memorials are some of the nation's most important landmarks and monuments. A shelter in the sea. Hawaii is a group of islands in the South Pacific. Pearl Harbor is a natural harbor on Hawaii's Oahu Island. Hawaiians called the harbor Waimomi. This means pearl waters in the native Hawaiian language. Many pearl oysters lived in the harbor. Native Hawaiians harvest the oysters and caught fish in the harbor. They believed the shark goddess Ka'ahopua and her brother Kahiuka lived in the harbor's waters. They protected the Hawaiians from the sharks that prowled there. In 1776, Captain James Cook left England to explore America's Pacific coast. He was looking for the Northwest Passage. 2 years later, on his way north, Captain Cook discovered Hawaii. He called the islands the Sandwich Islands. After Captain Cook came to Hawaii, it became a center of trade in the South Pacific. Soon missionaries and businessmen arrived from the United States. Pearl Harbor became a busy port. In 1887, the United States and Hawaii signed a treaty. The treaty said that the United States could build a coal station at Pearl Harbor. The coal station would refuel and repair ships traveling on the Pacific trade routes. In exchange, Hawaii could export sugar to the United States without paying taxes. The influence of U.S. business and missionary work weakened Hawaii's government. In 1898, the United States annexed the Hawaiian Islands. In 1900, Hawaii became U.S. territory. Naval Station. The United States thought that Pearl Harbor would be an excellent place for a naval station. In 1899, the U.S. Navy took control of the coal station. In November of that year, a naval station was officially established. In 1901, the U.S. government passed the Appropriation Act. This act gave the Navy money to buy the land surrounding the harbor. Then the Navy built ship repair facilities, housing, and a water system. The harbor was dredged so that big ships could sail in through the entrance. During this time, the U.S. Army also had bases in the Pearl Harbor area. Some Army leaders thought that the Army should have control of Pearl Harbor, and other government departments were claiming parts of the harbor's land as well. For example, the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Labor and Commerce claimed land for projects of their own. Navy leaders did not believe this was fair. They realized Pearl Harbor's value as a naval station, and the Navy was spending money to improve the harbor. In 1908, the Pearl Harbor Naval Station was completed. Soon, businesses and private citizens could not use the harbor anymore. In 1919, the Navy bought Ford Island. Ford Island is a 450-acre island in the middle of the harbor. It was named after Dr. Seth Ford, a Honolulu physician. The Navy built Luke Field on the island. The Navy shared the base with the Army. In 1920, the Naval Air Station was built there. By 1934, the Navy had spent more than $42 million on Pearl Harbor Naval Station. In 1935, military operations were organized into two units, the Island District and the Naval Station. The Island District was responsible for base operations, security, and the people who kept the ships in good order. The Naval Station was responsible for operation of the naval ships. By 1941, Pearl Harbor was named home to the U.S. Navy's Pacific Fleet. There was also a naval air base, a submarine base, a marine base, army bases, and a PT boat base at Pearl Harbor. The world at war. World War II began when Germany invaded Poland in 1939. Then Britain and France declared war on Germany in support of Poland. Soon, many other countries became involved in the war. In 1940, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed the Tripartite Pact. It established these three countries and their allies as the Axis powers. They supported each other's efforts to conquer neighboring countries. Other countries, led by Britain and France, were called the Allies. They joined together to fight the Axis powers. But the Allies needed help against such powerful opponents, so they asked the United States for aid. Many Americans did not want the United States to enter the war. The U.S. government passed the Lend-Lease Act in 1941. Under this act, the United States could send aid to nations under Axis attack. In July of 1941, the U.S. government froze Japan's assets in the United States. They did this in response to Japan's actions to overtake its neighboring countries. The United States also stopped shipments of petroleum products to Japan. The U.S. actions upset Japan's leaders, so Prime Minister Tojo Hideki decided to attack the United States. Many Japanese people did not want to go to war with the United States. They wanted to find a peaceful solution to the conflicts between the countries. But Japan's leaders wanted to destroy the U.S. naval fleet in the Pacific. They thought this would allow Japan to easily expand to the South Pacific, and they wanted to pay back the United States for freezing Japan's assets in the United States. Admiral Yamamoto Isoraku was a commander-in-chief of Japan's fleet. Japan's government asked him to plan the attack on the United States. Yamamoto did not believe the attack was a good idea. He knew the United States had a powerful nation. He believed Japan would lose the war if war lasted more than a year. But Yamamoto had to follow the orders of Japan's leaders, so he thought about the attack. He decided the best chance of a Japanese victory was to attack the United States by surprise, so he planned a secret attack on the Pearl Harbor Naval Station. On November 26, 1941, a fleet of Japanese Navy ships sailed to an area north of Hawaii. There, about 360 planes on a 6-aircraft carriers waited for the attack to begin. December 7, 1941. On December 7, 1941, shortly before 8 a.m., Japanese planes flew into Pearl Harbor. The pilots found that almost the entire U.S. Pacific Fleet was anchored in the harbor. The ships were waiting to be inspected. There were 130 U.S. Navy ships in Pearl Harbor. 8 of them were battleships. There were also 9 cruisers, 29 destroyers, and 5 submarines. The Japanese dropped bombs on the ships. They dropped torpedoes into the water near the ships. The Japanese pilots also dropped bombs on nearby U.S. Army, Air Force, and Marine bases. The attack ended at about 10 a.m. 21 ships were damaged or sunk, 188 planes were destroyed, and 159 planes were damaged. The attack killed 2,403 U.S. military personnel and wounded 1,178 others. 49 civilians died, and 83 others were wounded. The Japanese lost 29 planes, 55 pilots, and 5 submarines. On December 8, 1941, the U.S. Congress declared war on Japan. Now the United States entered World War II. The U.S. Pacific Fleet was quickly rebuilt. American forces joined the Allies in the war against the Axis powers. The war was a long, hard struggle. Thousands of troops on both sides were killed. American soldiers rallied around the cry, "Remember Pearl Harbor." They wanted to avenge the people who died in the attack. Eventually, the Allies took control. On June 6, 1944, troops landed on the beaches of Normandy, France. This is called D-Day. They began liberating countries from German control. On May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered. May 8th is called VE, Victory in Europe Day. Soon the Allies had freed Europe from Axis control, but the Japanese continued to fight, so U.S. leaders dropped nuclear bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, Japan. Japan surrendered to the Allies on August 14, 1945. August 15th is called VJ, Victory over Japan Day, on September 2nd, 1945. World War II officially ended when Japanese leaders signed a surrender treaty on the USS Missouri. Memorials. After the war, many people thought that there should be memorials at Pearl Harbor. They wanted to honor those who lost their lives on December 7, 1941. So in 1949, Hawaii established the Pacific War Memorial Commission. It would raise money to build the memorials. In 1951, the PWMC decided to build a series of memorials. Sites that would receive memorials included Red Hill, the U.S. Marine Parade Ground, the main gate of Pearl Harbor Naval Air Station, and the USS Arizona. On December 7, 1955, a plaque on Ford Island was dedicated. This plaque was Pearl Harbor's first permanent memorial. Of all the vessels damaged in the Pearl Harbor attack, only the USS Arizona was permanently lost. A bomb had landed in its ammunition storage area. The ship sank in less than 9 minutes. This ship lost more than 1,700 men. Many people wanted a special memorial to honor this massive loss of life on the USS Arizona. In 1950, the U.S. Navy began to raise and lower the American flag over the wreck every day. They did this as a sign of respect for the lost crewmen. Before 1958, the U.S. Navy could only accept money from the U.S. Treasury. That year, the government passed a law that allowed the Navy to accept money from other sources. So the PWMC began to raise funds for the USS Arizona Memorial. It raised more than $500,000.